Vin Bonventry from Albany Law School, thank you as always for being here.
Always great to be with you, Dan.
Thank you. So we're talking about the Court of Appeals. It's something that I think doesn't get enough attention in New York because I think that people just don't really know the equivalent. So it's like the U.S. Supreme Court, which people pay quite a bit of attention to, especially in the area that we're in of the year. But the State Court of Appeals does basically the same function, just with state court cases. So let's start with how we talk about the Supreme Court usually, which is about ideology. We've seen in recent years the U.S. Supreme Court shift to conservative versus liberal. How do we see that with the Court of Appeals, Vin? It's not something that we talk about too often. Is it more of a conservative court, or are we talking about a liberal court on the Court of Appeals with the judges sitting there right now?
Well, the court, of course, changes depending upon the composition, just like the United States Supreme Court. Currently, the court's a little bit more conservative. I mean, to the extent we mean conservative, more pro-prosecution and more rights of the accused, a little less sympathetic to plaintiffs in civil lawsuits. It's a little more conservative today than even it was 5, 10 years ago. But we're not talking about a court that's anywhere near socially and politically as conservative as, say, a Clarence Thomas on the United States Supreme Court, or the late Antonin Scalia, or the new Neil Gorsuch. We're not talking anything like that. We're talking about conservative within the context of New York State.
Right. It's the conservative in New York, which is not anywhere near the people that you mentioned.
Nothing like that. No.
Exactly. So a question
It's kind of like being a liberal in New York City as opposed to being a Democrat in upstate New York.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
So a question that I get a lot about all of this is, why does this even matter? Can you explain to our viewers, because I feel like maybe I don't do a good enough job about it sometimes. Can you explain to our viewers why the Court of Appeals is so important? And I know it's kind of confusing because we have the Supreme Court in New York, which is actually the lowest level of court in New York, and then we have what we're talking about, which is the Court of Appeals.
It's the most ridiculous nomenclature
It really
to
is.
speak of our trial court as Supreme Court and talk about our highest court as Court of Appeals. That's an accident of history, but in any event, those who follow courts know that the New York Court of Appeals is the highest court in New York. Historically, it's been one of the most influential courts in the country, and in fact, for much of its history, it was widely recognized as the finest and most influential court in the entire nation. Why is it important? We talk a lot about the United States Supreme Court, but the fact of the matter is that with regard to the final interpretations of our constitutional rights, most of that is done for New Yorkers by the New York Court of Appeals. So, for example, when the New York Court of Appeals, as it has done, protects freedom of speech more than the federal Supreme Court, freedom of the press more than the federal Supreme Court, search and seizure rights, right to counsel, interrogation rights, parental rights, education rights, I could go on and on and on. That's the supreme law of New York. And so the New York Court of Appeals is not permitted to violate what the Supreme Court says, but the New York Court of Appeals can certainly protect rights a lot more than the United States Supreme Court does. And typically that has been the role of the New York Court of Appeals.
So it's obviously very influential. And as you said before, the judges that are sitting on the court right now make up a sort of New York conservative ideology. And we should mention that all of the judges that are sitting on the court have been appointed by Governor Andrew Cuomo, obviously a Democrat who is considered more to the left than some of his colleagues, but also considered a moderate. He has to fill 3 vacancies this year. What are we looking at here, Vin? Do we expect him to nominate more of the same sorts of judges, or do we have any expectations, I guess?
Well, I don't think we have any expectations with regard to ideology. This is not like, if President Obama is putting justices on the Supreme Court, we can figure they're going to be pretty liberal. Donald Trump puts justices on the court, we can bet they're going to be pretty socially and politically conservative. Andrew Cuomo doesn't seem to have any particular ideological bent or ideological pattern to his appointees. So, for example, on the current court, you have Judge Michael Garcia, who's pretty conservative. Again, we're not talking about Justice Clarence Thomas or Justice Scalia.
Conservative
but he's
light.
pretty conservative. That's right. He's pretty conservative. The chief judge, Janet DiFiore, at least in criminal cases, she's pretty conservative. At the other end of the court, you have Judge Rowan Wilson and you have Judge Jenny Rivera, who are quite socially and politically liberal, and they would be in the mode of, say, Justice Sonia Sotomayor or Justice Elena Kagan. The three who are departing the court, who have departed the court this year that will be replaced, they are much more difficult to place on the court's spectrum. They're kind of like in the middle, and it depends upon whether the more liberal judges on the court can persuade two of them to make a majority, or the more conservative members of the court, Garcia and DiFiore, could convince them to join with them. So it's nothing like the Supreme Court, where you have four very, very conservative justices. You have, well, now you only have three quite liberal justices. And then it really depends on where Chief Justice Roberts is going to go. You don't have that kind of deep division on the New York Court of Appeals.
So really, these new judges could have a major impact, since they're not, they may be in the middle like their predecessors.
That's right. If Andrew Cuomo happens to pick, say, three judges for the New York Court of Appeals who are quite liberal, well, then Jenny Rivera and Rowan Wilson will probably have three more allies on the court, or it could be the opposite. But again, Andrew Cuomo has not shown a bent for putting a particular ideological sort of judge on the court at all.
All right, we will see how this all plays out. Vin Bonventre from Albany Law School, thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me, Dan.